So you were part of the National Eucharistic Congress. You're like the worship leader. Can you tell me like how you got the gig, how you like got involved with all that and yeah, just like your experience there.
Oh my gosh. It's a very loaded question. I feel like it's going to take me a while to unpack what being a part of that event was. And I think I didn't fully understand what we said yes to before going. I don't think any of us did, maybe. As is often the way with the Lord, like he just has, I don't know, like just the whole thing was just completely mind-blowing to me. I got invited several years ago at this point, like when they were first starting to plan it, maybe not several years ago, but a few years ago. Bishop Cousins had sent out a few invites to musicians and speakers, and so he had reached out. Not even personally. I think he just reached out to a bunch of people and sent a letter and said, "This is what we're going to be doing. Please mark your calendars for it." And so I was like, "Of course, would love to be a part of it in any way." And just got invited to lead worship at the main general sessions in the mornings, and then got to be a part of Saturday Night Adoration with Matt Maher. He graciously invited me to be a part of that with him, and yeah, the whole experience. Honestly, I've done conferences for 15 years now, and I felt like this just had a completely different feel to it. Were you there? Were you a part of it?
I was watching from home.
Okay, okay. It just, I think from the people that were a part of it, like the attendees, it felt like everyone was hungry, just ready to go. From day one, they just were excited and truly there for Jesus. Like it just felt like it wasn't this like celebrity Catholic culture that you can kind of get at different conferences, or it can kind of turn into that. It didn't feel that way to me. It just felt like we were all there for Jesus and whatever he wanted to do. It was all different types of cultures and ages. And normally, the conferences that I go to, it's like young adults or teenagers or a women's conference, but this was everyone under the sun. And there was something for everyone, musically and speaker wise. And like, it wasn't even just one Catholic subculture represented. It felt like all of the subcultures were present and operating in the same space, and in a day and age when it feels like we can easily be so divided, especially on the internet. It feels very toxic sometimes. The Catholic world on the internet can feel that way. It felt the exact opposite. It just felt like we were all together and unified, and in the same space, and after going after the same goal, which was just to encounter the Lord in the Eucharist, and truly just be transformed by that and be filled up so that we could be sent out into the world as new creations. And so, yeah, it just felt really profoundly beautiful to be a part of. And I think we're going to be experiencing the ripples from this event for a long time to come.
Yeah, I mean, just watching from home, it had like such an impact on me. So I can only imagine
Mm,
being there.
yeah.
What would you say was like your one biggest takeaway from being?
Mm. I think uh I think the unity piece, honestly, to me, I speak to this a lot. I think that there's a difference between uniformity and unity. Like unity doesn't mean that we all have to be the same, that we all have to think the same, that we all have to, we're all different. We're not going to ever be completely the same, but that's not the goal. Like the goal to me is being unified under the kingship of Christ. And there was a real sense of just unity of one church, one body, many parts, but one body at that event. And I just felt like if we can do this here with 50,000 Catholics, then we can do this as a church. And it's a worthy it's worthy work to be doing. I think again, it's so easy for us to get kind of swept up in the different subcultures that each of us maybe find connection in, and whether it's music like chant music or contemporary worship or different expressions of mass or the faith or whatever, it can be very easy to be siloed and kind of like get in our own little bubbles. But if there's anything that the NEC taught me is like we can come together and pray together and be unified and still be distinct in our own unique ways. There's nothing wrong with that, but coming together as a church, we're stronger together. And that's what the NEC kind of showed me and reminded me of, and just made me feel like I am so proud to be a part of this church, this one body. Um, Truly, I'm so proud to be Catholic. And uh, I mean, I don't know if I want this on the record, but like there's been times in the past few years, especially online, where it's just felt like, what is happening? This is a dumpster fire, you know? It's felt like so contentious and toxic. And if you just spend time on Catholic Twitter, like it's a dark place. I deleted Twitter in 2020 and I've never looked back. But the NEC just felt like the exact opposite. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It just felt like we are made to be one body, and we can do this. But it requires everyone's participation and willingness to stand side by side, even when we don't agree on every little thing. So it's possible. I saw it with my own two eyes and experienced it that week, truly.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. How did you go about selecting music? Was there any process behind that?
That's a great question. I always obviously pray before making a set list, and most of the time before an event, I'll take time to like write down these are the songs, especially for my band. Like I'll be like, these are the songs we're going to choose from. But almost always, I can guarantee you that it's never going to turn out to be the set list that I choose ahead of time. So there's a certain level of flexibility that, especially the guys in my band, they know that they have to have, because most of the time, like even in the moment, I'll be like, oh, that's not the right song. The speaker just talked about identity and we're going to switch to this song or whatever. So there's always a level of flexibility that we have. You try to plan and prepare as much ahead of time, but there was definitely a lot of just relying on the Holy Spirit and allowing Him to lead in the moment as much as possible. But yeah, it's a lot of prepare to be able to be flexible, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you briefly tell me your story about how you became a Catholic worship leader?
Yeah. My parents were both Catholic music ministers from before I was born. So I was kind of born into it. We were always at church, always, voluntold to be a part of the children's choir, taking voice lessons and piano lessons and all that good stuff. But I was terrified to sing in front of people for the longest time. I was bullied a lot in elementary school. And so I kind of refused to engage with that side of my life for many years. And then I went to a camp, a Catholic camp, when I was a junior in high school, and Matt Maher was leading worship, and it was the first time that I ever experienced contemporary worship music. And that's really the way that I learned how to have a personal relationship with Jesus, was through the worship music and learning how to pray in that way. And I kind of never looked back. And there was a speaker on that retreat that was speaking to the whole room, but it was one of those moments where it felt like the light was just on me. And he said, if you have a gift from God and you're not using it, you're denying the glory of God within you. And I just felt like he was convicting me in that moment. And God was inviting me to step out in faith and to start saying yes. And so I went back to my church and I started cantering on Sundays, absolutely terrified, probably sounded like a dying animal for the first year at least of cantering at Mass. But just felt convicted that the Lord was asking me to say yes. And with each passing week, I just kept saying yes, and my courage and bravery kind of grew over time. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. But at the time, yeah, it was a big step for me. So I'm grateful for um, the people who have gone before me and kind of paved a way and just taught me honestly how to pray through music, because it led me to where I am today for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so beautiful. I feel like a lot of people think only of like Christian evangelical churches having like worship leaders. So how
Yeah.
like would you say like now the Catholic Church is kind of in like taking part and having, Catholic worship? How is that different from other churches?
Hmm. I mean, I think there are definitely Catholic worship leaders. I think even the term worship leader is an interesting term. It definitely comes from the Protestant church. Sometimes don't love that term because I feel like it's more like we're leading prayer. Like we're up front and we're on stage a lot of times, but it doesn't mean that I'm the one that knows all the answers in the room, and so I'm leading this thing. It's more like, no, I'm a student just like anyone else in the room. I just happen to have a microphone and I can sing and and I know how to lead a moment of prayer. But really what I'm trying to do is just lead people into an encounter with God. And lead myself in the same way and make space for God to do whatever it is that he wants to do in the room. And so um yeah, it might be a term that was coined by the Protestant church, but I know several Catholic worship leaders that do the same thing, that are just trained in how to lead moments of prayer and encounter, and I hope that honestly the younger generation feels inspired to, that if they are called to the same thing, that there's a space for them to do that and that there's opportunities for them to do that, because I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to lead moments of prayer and encounter. And I think everyone, there are so many churches around the United States that need people who are trained in that way, and so yeah, hopefully it'll just inspire younger generations to answer the call if that's what they're feeling called to as well, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I love it. I love that I feel like having more and more. My church personally has like a Friday night worship
Yeah,
and for like the youth and the young adults, and I love it. So I'm glad that
yeah,
they're starting to do that more and more in the Catholic Church.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite worship song?
Hmm. I think that changes a lot depending on
Top
what
three.
what I'm walking through at the time, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
One of my favorites of all time, at least of the last 3 years, not of all time, but of the last couple of years, is "Who You Say I Am" by Hillsong. It probably is because identity has been something that I've struggled with for a long time. And so I always say that when I'm leading worship, I always say that worship music to me is songs of remembrance. It's songs that remind us who we are and who God is, which are two things that we so easily forget. And especially in the face of the world these days, and in the face of social media and comparison trap and all those things, like it can be so easy to forget who we are and who God is. And so anything that speaks to our identity and reinforces that, even at times there's times where I'm singing a worship song like "Who You Say I Am," and I'm struggling to believe those words, but there's power in singing truth over yourself. I believe that with my whole heart. It does something to us internally. It releases something. It shapes, how we view ourselves and how we view the world, and it really has an impact on us. And so that's probably one of my favorites. And then also "Lord, I Need You," classic Matt Maher is still one of my favorite songs to lead till this day. It's just such a cry of the heart, truly. So I love leading that song as well.
Yeah, I love both of those also.
Yeah.
How do you think Catholics can pray and worship better through music in our own parishes?
Mm. Oh my gosh, you're giving me some heavy hitter questions. I like it. How
Sorry.
can Catholics worship better? Huh. I I'm not even sure if it's about worshiping better as much as it is like worship to me is inherently like it's tied to a sacrifice of praise. Like worship should be costly in that it should challenge us. I once heard this worship described as like the holiness of God. Um, uh, what is the word I'm looking for? The holy, like when we worship God, it's the holiness of God um, meeting and calling out to whatever is unholy in us and challenging that. So calling out what's unholy in us, because worship, it should be drawing us into the presence of God. And that should be something that leads us to repentance. It's not just something that's supposed to make us feel good and kind of placate whatever we're walking through. I think there is a place for that, for sure. I think there is comfort a lot of times to be found in moments of worship and moments of encountering God. But I also think that worship should challenge us and should change us and should make us really take a good hard look at how we're living our lives, and confront whatever is unholy in us, so that we're challenged to leave that place of worship, right? Wherever we're praying and having a moment of like, congregational type worship, so that we're challenged to leave those places and change the world. Like change our lives, change our families' lives, change, the world around us. And it should change how we view others and serve others and love others in this world. So worship to me is about, repentance and challenging us to live different lives and lives that point to God, not just in our church, bubbles, but to be sent out from those places, just like the Mass is meant to send us out. Moments of prayer and worship should do the same, in my opinion.